Welcome one and all, everybody young at heart and everybody young. We have a very exciting program for you today at the EU ASEAN Youth Talk, the very first one in the series. Today we're gonna ask the ambassador about EU ASEAN Strategic Partnership. And our session today will have a very extensive 50 minutes for question and answer live with Ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Igor Driesmans, the Ambassador of the European Union to ASEAN. And we also have a very exciting, fun quiz where the top winners will win a prize. So stay tuned for that. But before we begin, I would like to remind you of some very basic house rules. And the first one is that this session is being recorded. So if you're joining us today, please do note that your image or your comments will be recorded and may be broadcast later on. I will also explain more rules about how to participate in the question and answer session in a little bit. But to introduce myself, hello, my name is Mika Tan. I am from the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, and I run the ASEAN Youth Biodiversity Program. So the video that you just watched is about the beauty and the natural heritage that we all own here in our home region, the ASEAN. And you also saw that nature provides us with so much, with clean air, clean water, and we learned too through the COVID-19 pandemic that nature can help mediate and prevent future pandemics. So I'd like to share with you very quickly about how young people can take part to protect our precious biodiversity and how this is also part of the ASEAN-EU Strategic Partnership in Sustainable Development. So let me quickly just share my screen here. I hope you can see a presentation here about the ASEAN Youth Biodiversity Program. This is a collaboration between the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity and the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, launched in September 2018 with generous support from the European Union through the Biodiversity Conservation and Management of Protected Areas in ASEAN project. What this project really aims to do is to have young people be recognized and involved in conserving our precious biodiversity and part of our ASEAN identity in your local areas, in your countries, and also together regionally as ASEAN. We provide capacity building, we strengthen youth-led projects for conservation, we build communities of young people passionate about biodiversity in ASEAN. And importantly too, we connect youth with decision makers so that we can elevate the youth's role in contributing to biodiversity conservation in the region. We do this through two main sub-programs. One is called the Youth Biodiversity Leaders. This is a one-year in-depth capacity building fellowship for youth biodiversity leaders in the region. And for many of you who are interested to know about what protected areas are, where do you find all of this beautiful biodiversity in ASEAN? We're also offering youth internships in protected areas in ASEAN all over. So please do check out our website at aybp.aseanbiodiversity.org to find out more about these programs. You may also contact me and I'll provide my information later on because I run the youth program. But today, my role is not just about telling you about the beauty of nature in ASEAN, but I'm also your moderator, one of two moderators today for our Ask the Ambassador session. And I will pass the time on now for my co-moderator, Irish, to introduce herself.
ย้อนว่าเห็นวัยหนุ่มอยู่บ้านนี้แม่นบ่มีเวียกเฮ็ดงานทำแล้วก็รายหลักแม่นเอามาจากพ่อแม่นะขอเงินพ่อแม่ก็เลยคิดว่าถ้าวัยหนุ่มสร้างรายได้โดยตนเองก็คือสิดีแบ่งเบาภาระครอบครัวได้หลายขึ้นกิจกรรมหลักนี่แม่นเฮ็ดสบู่กาแฟที่นำเอากากาแฟจากการตองแล้วนะเอากากมันมาเฮ็ดสบู่กลุ่มวัยหนุ่มเดี๋ยวนี้แม่นมีอยู่7คนโดยเฮามีการลงทุนพร้อมกัน ถ้าที่จะผลิตสบู่ 1,000 ก่อนนี่เฮาจะใช้เงิน8 ล้านและก็กว่าจะได้เงิน8 ล้านนี่เฮามีการระดมทุนจากสมาชิกภายใน7คนเฮาไหลเพียงแต่3 ล้านตอนนั้นยังขาดอีก5 ล้านกลุ่มเครือข่ายกสิกรลาวก็เลยช่วยประทับใจก็คือสามารถเฮ็ดให้วัยหนุ่มมีเวียกเฮ็ดงานทำได้เฮานำเอาความรู้ในสถานที่ใหม่น่ะมาปรับเปลี่ยนในให้กลุ่มเฮาทั้งกลุ่มมีผลิตภัณฑ์ใหม่แม่น2อย่างคือผงดับกลิ่นและก็แยมผงดับกลิ่นนี่เฮาสามารถผลิตขายได้ตลอดแต่ว่าแยมนี่แม่นผลิตได้แต่เฉพาะฤดูของกาแฟสุกเท่านั้น
Hello, mabuhay. Greetings from the Philippines. My name is Irish Dominado, and I will be the co-moderator for this activity. I work for the Asian Farmers Association for Sustainable Rural Development, or AFA. AFA is an alliance of national farmers organizations in Asia composed of small-scale family farmers, fishers, indigenous peoples, forest users, herders, and pastoralists. And currently, AFA has 22 member organizations in East, Central, South, and Southeast Asia. The organization aims to strengthen the capacities of the leaders and technical staff of national farmers organizations to lead them to the eradication of poverty and hunger, increased resilience, and sense of well-being of family farmers in Asia. To achieve this, one of the programs being implemented by AFA is Aphos, a program funded by the EU. May I request Elita and her team to please show the PowerPoint presentation? Thank you. Next slide, please. So what is Aphos? ASEAN Farmers Organization Support Program, or Aphos, is a 5-year program supported by the EU with co-financing from IFAD. It aims to improve the livelihood and food security situation of smallholder farmers and rural producers in ASEAN countries. It is implemented in 7 member states of ASEAN, and we are partnering with 25 national farmers federation, and all these farmers organizations have over 15 million farmer members. Next slide, please. The program has 3 main components. The first is addressing the organizational capacity of the farmers organization. The second component is building their capacity to effectively influence policies at all levels. So that's national, local, regional, and even global. And the third component focuses on building the capacities of farmers organizations to provide improved economic services to their members. So that's from production, processing, packaging, marketing, and access to finance or credit. Next slide, please. The program also has an important focus on youth because we believe that we need young people to engage in agriculture. We are conducting various leadership training to develop the capacities of our young farmers. We conduct entrepreneurial skills training, leadership training. We train our young farmers to make business plans, and we are also promoting policies that will support young farmers. Next slide, please. In 2020, we conducted an activity specifically to target young farmers. This was called the Young Farmers Dance Challenge, which aimed to attract young people to join farmers organizations, to build friendship and cooperation among our young farmers, as well as to raise awareness about their contribution in preventing the spread of COVID-19 and their contribution in the recovery from the pandemic. We received around 15 dance video entries from young farmer groups under the Aphos and APFP platform. And the winner received a $1,000 catalytic fund for their business plan, as well as coaching from our business development officers on how they can develop their business plan. All other participants as well will receive coaching from our business development officers. If you want to watch the videos, you can head on to our YouTube channel at Asia Pacific Farmers, and we receive many positive feedback from this activity, so we plan to conduct more similar fun activities for the youth. Next slide, please. So why do we need to support farmers organizations? To appreciate Aphos, we believe that the critical role of agriculture as backbone key pillar for sustainable development can only be unleashed and maximize with organized and strong FOs and agricultural cooperatives. Economically, our FOs and cooperatives serve as effective channel for consolidating agricultural production and collective marketing. They serve as aggregators and consolidators within the framework of shorter and inclusive value chain. And politically, FOs and cooperatives ensure quick feedback from the field to policymakers and service providers. They consult and consolidate feedback into policy proposals towards favorable policy environment for smallholder farmers. In addition, FOs and cooperatives also serve as guardians of environment through promotion of sustainable technologies. And moreover, FOs and cooperatives strengthen community solidarity, such as Gotong Royong Indonesia or Bayanihan in the Philippines. So how can you support FOs? First, probably the simplest way you can support them is patronize and promote FO products. Just like the video that you saw earlier, that was a young farmer group from Laos. They sell coffee products. And also our partners in Thailand are selling organic vegetables. Our partners in Indonesia are selling coffee, honey, rice, and other products. Our partners in the Philippines sell rice, coconut products, and among others. And you can visit our website at AsiaPacificFarmersForum.net for more information about our FO products. And another way for youth to help FOs is to be a volunteer or intern for FOs in your countries. So you can help them prepare their business plan. You can help document their success stories. If you are doing your thesis, you can make a case study or analysis on their activities, and you can also help set up a social media account where they can post their activities as well as sell their products, such as Facebook. You know, this was very helpful during the pandemic because of the limitation in mobility. So FOs had to rely on social media to sell their products. And if you are a student, you can also provide extension support, such as pest management, innovative farming technologies, and you can promote and support pro-smallholder farmer policies such as affordable interest rate and climate insurance. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we believe that with your help, we can achieve food security. So we call for your support. Please support our farmers. And for more information, our social media channels are flashed on the screen right now. You can check out our activities, and also if you have questions, you can just type in the chat box and I will try to address them. So yeah, for the next part of our activity, please pay attention to this session because we will have a quiz later, as Mika mentioned, and the answers to some of these questions might be mentioned in the next session. So without further ado, let us welcome His Excellency Mr. Igor Driesmans, the EU Ambassador to ASEAN, for his opening remarks.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Irish. Thank you, Mika. It's very good being here. Good afternoon from Jakarta, where I'm sitting, and welcome to this first regional youth talk in 2021, where we'll focus on EU-ASEAN development cooperation and in a wider way, the EU-ASEAN partnership. I'm very happy to see so much interest in EU-ASEAN relations and to be able to speak to you about our work, but also to hear from you about your ideas, suggestions and questions. Maybe a few introductory remarks. I'll try to be brief so that we can really focus on an exchange. I think to start with, our partnership between the EU and ASEAN is in a very good shape. In December 2020, the foreign ministers from the European Union and ASEAN elevated that partnership, long-standing partnership, 44 years, to that of a strategic partnership. This maybe it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's important in two ways. Firstly, it entails a commitment from both sides to hold regular summit meetings between our heads of state and government. But secondly, it sends a strong message from both sides saying, We might be geographically far apart, but we need to cooperate more. We need to deepen existing cooperation and expand it to new areas, because all what we do together will benefit the citizens in both regions, whether it's through economic growth, the promotion of security, a better environment, improved connectivity, you name it. And to illustrate this and maybe to kick off the discussion, I'd like to give two examples of this cooperation and what it can mean to you. The first one is on a topic that is on the minds of everybody, and that is the delivery of safe and effective COVID vaccines. Now, we all know that vaccines are key to bring an end to this current crisis. And we have seen an unprecedented scientific effort, which has eventually now brought about several safe and effective COVID vaccines, which means that there is there is light at the end of this tunnel. And I should say that there has been much talk about vaccine nationalism these days. People talking about rich countries keeping vaccines to themselves, thinking only about themselves and their own citizens. I just like to share with you today that we in the EU have taken a rather radical view. That is that no region, no country, no group of people should be at a disadvantage or indeed precluded from having a fair, equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines that are both safe to use and provide the necessary levels of quality control standards and protection. That's why we have invested so strongly in the so-called COVAX facility. It's a WHO global initiative to ensure fair and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines for all around the world. Actually, half of the financing of the COVAX facility comes from the EU. And the ASEAN region as well will benefit very much from this facility. The first COVAX financed vaccines will arrive in this region at the end of the month of February. And COVAX, the facility, projects that there will be 7 million vaccines being delivered and injected in ASEAN in the first quarter and 15 million in the second quarter. Of course, this is not without challenges. So to accompany this vaccination, we started an expert dialogue between the EU and ASEAN so that experts can discuss issues such as authorization, distribution, logistics, all the challenges that come about with the delivery of vaccines. But I just like to say that this is what we stand for. At a moment when we see so many countries waving with vaccine promises to their political friends, we have chosen a multilateral way, which is maybe less visible, which maybe gives us less credit, but we think it's the right thing to do. And I think ASEAN in that respect is very much our partner. So that was the first example. The second one is to work with ASEAN on addressing climate change. Now, I think most of you would agree that climate change is the challenge of the century. And that's why the EU has made it the centerpiece of EU internal and EU external policy. And by 2050, we aim to have zero net emissions within the EU of CO2 to become climate neutral by 2050. Now, many have thought that the current COVID crisis would make us forget about climate change, but I think the opposite has been true. I think many people now understand that the current crisis is also a big opportunity to change our policies and to change our economies. And you know, the EU and many other countries around the world will now inject a lot of money into the rebooting, the recovery of their countries, their economies. And for us, it's clear that this massive funding that is going to be injected in the economies should support this green transition. And we're very comforted to see that ASEAN shares this commitment to basically build back better and put sustainability at the heart of its own recovery plan. So that will be one other area where we will work hand in hand with ASEAN. You've heard from Mika the example of biodiversity, where we already partner with ASEAN since a long time. We work together on issues like the sustainable development of pitlands, notably in Indonesia, Malaysia, but also in other countries. Now we want to broaden that and work together on green technology, circular economy, renewable energy, of course, which we already do, smart green cities, and so on and so forth. So that's basically what I wanted to say as an introduction. That is, what we do matters to you, ASEAN youths, and I'm therefore very interested in hearing your questions, and don't hesitate to say what you think our priorities should be, or to criticize, or to say whatever you want. Don't hold back, and thanks again for being here with us today. Over to you, Mika, or Irish.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Driesmans. And you are very right. Everything that happens in ASEAN and everything that happens in EU is interconnected. And we are already getting a lot of questions about what you just talked about, not just about the COVID vaccine situation, but or about sustainable development and climate change. There are many others that the youth are very interested in. But before we dive into these questions, I just wanted to start off with a lighthearted one so that people feel a little bit more about and know a little bit more about you, and they feel more comfortable asking you all the tough questions as you have requested from them. So this first question is actually from Jarifa Putri, a student from Umukuro Junior High School from Indonesia. She asks, what are the advantages and disadvantages of being the ambassador?
Right. Well, I can mainly see advantages, quite frankly. It is a really fun job, and I think my main job consists of communicating the EU policies to ASEAN, but also trying to tell my own headquarters what ASEAN thinks, so that they know when they develop their policies what's going on in ASEAN, and so that they're better able to be in tune with the thinking here. And you know, one of the advantages, it doesn't happen every day, unfortunately, but just sometimes one has the feeling you can make just a little bit of difference by making those personal contacts between the EU and ASEAN. At least that's what I like to believe. In terms of disadvantages, as I said, there aren't many, but maybe sometimes one has to hold back a little bit on what you say, especially in social media. I would like to speak my mind sometimes a little more when one sees things that aren't necessarily in line with what one would think are you know, sound judgments. But yeah, it is only a minor disadvantage. One other is obviously that sometimes you have to pass a message which is not always very popular. If you are under instructions from your headquarters to say certain things, you have to say them, even if you know that it won't go down that well. But in the big scheme of things, I say there's mostly advantages.
In the big scheme of things, definitely. Thank you for sharing a little bit more about yourself. And with that, we are opening the questions for anybody who would like to ask. And that there are two ways in which you can provide your questions to the ambassador. First, you can use the Q&A box. So this platform is called Zoom, and there should be a button where you can find Q&A. And when you click on that, a box will appear where you can type your questions directly in there. And we will be able to pick some of them because we have a limited amount of time and we might not be able to ask every single question. But we are also open to having people ask questions live through voice. So if you would like to ask your question live, you may click on another button that says raise hand, and it should have a yellow hand there. So when you raise your hand, the team will know that you have a question that you'd like to ask our ambassador. And then I will call on some names to be able to ask your question. But again, we apologize if we cannot answer every single question today. There will be opportunities for unanswered questions to be answered via email after this session. So my next question is actually from the Q&A box, but I would also like to ask, would Widitya Laisa Pamidi from Indonesia like to answer the question, like to ask your question live by raising your hand? And then our organizers will be able to unmute you, and then you can speak and ask your question directly. You will need to click on unmute. Are you there, Liza? I'll wait just a little bit to see if your mic is working, but you can unmute yourself to ask your question if you would like. Perhaps your mic might not be working, or it might be difficult right now. Let's say, for example, you're tuning in while you are in transit. So I shall be able to ask the question here. So Mr. Ambassador, how does the EU redefine this strategic partnership as something bigger and more equal than before? You mentioned that in December 2020, it was elevated to a strategic partnership level. And she continues to say, because EU-ASEAN relation is still often seen as a donor-recipient relation, and that the EU is seeking for a security role in the region. What are your comments?
Thank you, Mika, and thanks for the question. I think it's true that we have already a very comprehensive relationship, and part of that is definitely a large envelope of development cooperation on many different areas. But another part of that is that we hold very frequent dialogues between experts and policy officials. That goes from anything from high-speed computing to climate change to trade, you name it. And we have an equal, I'd say, dialogue on these matters between the EU and ASEAN, and it's proven very difficult to get to know each other and to understand our policies and to see on which areas that we can work together. In the area of security, I think it's not just the EU looking for a bigger role. I think it's also ASEAN demanding the EU to play a bigger role. I think many in ASEAN have told us that they're not very comfortable to having to choose between the United States on the one hand or China on the other hand, and that they like partners like the European Union, but also others. I think about Japan, I think about India, Australia, of course, but they'd like to have different choices. And I think a bigger role from the European Union in security matters would therefore be also beneficial for the region. And that goes from cybersecurity to maritime security to counterterrorism, all these areas which are very important for the future of the region and for the stability of this region. So what the strategic partnership does is basically put all of this at the higher level, because we only have a very limited number of strategic partners around the world, and so does ASEAN. ASEAN has I think 8 strategic partners. The EU has 10. So it really means that with these partners, we want to intensify our cooperation in all these different domains, and indeed have regular talks between our presidents, which is for the time being not happening.
Thank you very much.
For our next question, may we ask Wilfred Josue if you want to ask your question live to the ambassador. You will be able to unmute and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, good afternoon there in ASEAN, and well, good morning here in Berlin, Germany. My name is Wilfred Josue, Ambassador Driesmans, and I have actually 3 questions for you. First, is there a plan to harness and maximize the potentials of students from ASEAN who finished their course in the EU and came back to their countries? My name is Wilfred, and I'm from the Philippines, but I'm based currently in Berlin, Germany. So I'd like to ask that first question. Second would be, what role do ASEAN migrants and ASEAN-related organizations based here in the EU play in the current strategic partnership of EU and ASEAN? And third, do you also imagine a visa-free travel between EU and ASEAN in the near future? And how possible could that be? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Will, for that question, or those questions, those 3 questions. I'll try to reply real quick. For the time being, we have two different strands of scholarship programs which we support. That is, firstly, within ASEAN, we have the so-called EU Share program. And through that program, we have financed close to 500 scholarships for students from 8 different ASEAN countries to travel around within the region. Since, I think that's since 2015. In addition, we have basically built in a kind of exchange of expertise and experience to see what we can do to help further to build that education community within ASEAN. So that's the first strand of scholarships that we have been supporting. The second one is basically to provide scholarships from ASEAN students to study in Europe. And I think there's been, I have to look at the figures, but I think there's been close to 800 ASEAN students who have actually been awarded such scholarships under the Erasmus Mundus joint master's degree, and over 5,500 students and staff from ASEAN universities have equally received funding. The type you were speaking about is for European students to study in ASEAN, which is again a totally different type, which we don't finance many of, but also under the Erasmus Mundus programs, there's different possibilities. So I would say check out the Erasmus Mundus program, and you will see that there should be some opportunities there. Your second question on the ASEAN, say, diaspora within Europe. I think, unfortunately, at this point, there hasn't been too much engagement between ourselves or policymakers in headquarters and the ASEAN diaspora. But definitely that would be one area where we'd be happy to listen to and enter into a dialogue with. Maybe a suggestion for a further webinar. Then your last question on visa-free travel. You know, the EU has some visa-free travel arrangement with a very selected group of countries. And I think for the time being, that list is kind of frozen. There's very little debate on enlarging that list, although we know that there is demand from several countries, including some in ASEAN, to engage in that. So it's a regular topic in our discussion, but I don't think in the very near future there would be any perspectives. Back to you.
Irish,
ask.
you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Ambassador. Will was lucky to be able to ask 3 questions because we were only asking participants for just 1 question because of the limited time. Anyway, if you have more questions, you can also chat in the Q&A box on your screen. We will also try to answer your questions there. And for the next one, we invite Lay Nicole Jangolan to ask your question live. Lay?
Hello, am I audible? Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Ambassadors. So I have 2 questions for you. First is, how can the youth participate with this EU-ASEAN partnership? And the second is, what are the benefits can the youth get from this partnership? That would be all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lei, for those 2 questions. First of all, on youth, I think you've heard basically from both Mika and Irish 2 examples of how youth can be involved in some of our development cooperation programs, be it on biodiversity, but also in our project on farmers organizations. I think we'd like to make that a systematic feature in all the programs that we have, and not just in also the education programs, which naturally touch upon youth. So we'll try to involve them. We try to work with youth on a systematic basis. And do check also our social media challenge on a regular basis to see what would be the opportunities to do exactly that. In addition, I would say I would hope that ASEAN Youth can also organize itself as it is doing. There's different organizations, the ASEAN Youth Organization. There's many ASEAN say collectives of youth, so that you can make your voice heard also within the region, that you can weigh on the decision making within ASEAN as you are doing. But I can only encourage that with a lot of empathy, let's say. In terms of the benefits for Europe of the strategic partnership, I think we through the strategic partnership, we would like to support ASEAN. And I think we don't do that just because we like ASEAN, but also because we think this is in the political and in the economic interest of the EU. Because we think ASEAN brings stability to the region, and hence it brings stability to the world. And a strong ASEAN can be this vector of stability in what can potentially be a very volatile region. Economically as well, a strong ASEAN means stronger integration. And when you say stronger integration, you mean more business opportunities for our companies. So from different, say, perspectives, a good way forward for us is basically through reinforcing ASEAN to deal with the challenges that it has, but which are very often global challenges which we face as well.
Thank you, Ambassador Driesmans. Very rightfully so. A more cohesive and integrated region will bring more prosperity and security to all the peoples here. And youth are very excited to know what we can do as part of these efforts. So I have a question here from Yoga Indra Pradipta from Jepara Green, Indonesia. They're asking, what is the role of the millennial generation in dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, let me say first that I'm sure you know this, but obviously youth is one of the biggest victims of the COVID-19 pandemic. You are the ones who basically carry the least risk, and that's from an epidemiologic point of view. At the same time, you're hit hardest because we know that schools are closed. Unfortunately, in some countries, schools are opened later than other economic activities, restaurants, bars, fitness centers, but schools in some parts of ASEAN have remained closed. So I do understand that it must be very, very hard, and it will be double hard because in the end, in the medium term, you will also carry the economic effects of that crisis, maybe more than some of the adults or older people, because of course you're also adults, that you will carry, not just because the economic activity go down and the opportunities for yourself, but very often the government will have to indebt itself to push the recovery, which in turn you will need to pay back. So that's just for starters. In terms of what you can do, I think what I hope is that you will draw the lessons of what has happened with this COVID-19 pandemic and bring it forward in the future. And that means pushing the recovery that is green, as I tried to say in my introduction, but also that we can together look for policies that are science-based. That I think one of the lessons that we can draw from this crisis is that populism only takes you so far. A virus is a very the kind of pandemic effects that we've seen, they don't respond to say slogans or artificial barriers. It's a very scientific event, so you have to deal with it in a scientific way, in a very methodological way. And I say that knowing full well that also in Europe, we have not handled the COVID-19 pandemic in a very brilliant way. So there's a lot of lessons to be learned, and I think you, as youth, you're ideally placed to draw these lessons and take them with you in the future.
Yes, learning from our elders is also another part of us becoming into young adults and bringing that forward. And I will now invite Arif Abdullah to speak and to ask your question live. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Great, I can hear you.
Good afternoon, ambassadors. Arif from Malaysia. Reflecting to what you mentioned earlier, first on the vaccine nationalism, and second on the importance of sustainable developments in relation to climate change. I just have two short questions on first, the recent EU ban export on COVID-19 vaccine, right? So I know some international group call this movement as the vaccine export ban by EU is kind of another vaccine nationalism, despite that you mentioned the EU approach on multilateralism when it comes to the vaccine to ensure its affordability and accessibility to the rest of the world, especially to the middle and lower income countries, right? And second, just a very quick one, this in relation to Malaysia, Indonesia, I think it's very famous issues of the EU ban on the palm oil, right? With the questions of the deforestation, the protection of environment. Well, some argue that it's rather on the protectionism policies imposed by EU because they want to protect the local edible oil products there. So it really is something that, despite of the relation that we have, I think these two issues, something that could probably affect this strategic partnership relationship that we're talking about between these two big regions. Thank you, ambassadors.
Thank you very much, Arif, and two very pertinent questions. On the first one, the export authorization. Let me just explain why we've done it and what we've done. Basically, we saw that a number of the vaccine producers and especially AstraZeneca were not delivering the number of vaccines that they had promised. And not just by a small margin, but by a big margin. And what the European Commission has said was that there might have been suspicions that the vaccines that were promised to be delivered contractually to the EU were actually being exported. Basically vaccines being produced in the EU. So what we have said is that when these exports happen, we'd like to know about it so that we see that everything happens in transparency. Because one of the other issues that we saw was that the companies in question would not say what, in all transparency, what they've done and with whom. And we said we would need full transparency for that. But let me just add two things to that. One is that we have not had to use this mechanism in any way. I think the very fact of having such mechanism was probably a good incentive. But secondly, that this does not hamper the export of vaccines to the 92 COVAX countries, or to any of the COVAX countries. Those that receive vaccines under the COVAX facility are exempted, as are lower income countries, as are middle income countries. So basically the vaccine authorization mechanism is not needed for those countries. And I think in the kind of communication and in the debate afterwards, I think that was lost. Well, this is key because we want to keep our promises on our stance on vaccine multilateralism. And I just like to say that what we do in terms of vaccine multilateralism and our contribution through COVAX is unparalleled by any partner around the world. Some of the partners, they'd like to present some vaccines as gifts to any particular country. I think we have chosen not to do that explicitly because of the reasons I tried to say at the beginning. Now on palm oil, again, if you allow me, I would just explain in 2 seconds that we do not have a ban on palm oil. Actually, exports from Indonesia and Malaysia to the European market, they continue. And actually in the last year, in 2020, they have increased with 40%. They have increased with 40%. Unfortunately, that's not a message that is circulating within Indonesia or within Malaysia, but it's sometimes good to just look at those facts. Now, what we have done is we have included the palm oil. It gets a bit technical, but I'd like to maybe simplify, is that they would no longer be able to benefit from some of the support schemes in terms of subsidies or in terms of tax cuts that other renewable energies receive. So that was the so-called RED II directive. But it's a totally different issue from being any market restriction or import restriction or whatsoever. And on that issue of recognition as a renewable energy, and hence being able to benefit from some of our support schemes, on that very issue, we have now a dialogue started between the EU and Indonesia and Malaysia. A working group has been set up, has met some 10 days ago for the first time. And I think that's what we really need to do. We need to talk more to each other. Our experts need to talk to each other so that we understand each other better, and we don't try to learn from each other through the press, but just that our officials can explain different policies, that we can listen to you and your concerns, and that we can have a good dialogue. Sorry, I was a bit too long. Maybe I'll try to be shorter to the next question. But thank you very much, Arif, for that question.
Thank you, Arif, for that question. Many of us also want to be informed about the matter of COVID vaccine, and thank you, Ambassador, for that elaborate answer. For the next question, we would like to invite Tanet Pitakabut of Thailand. Please ask your question live. Tanet?
Hello, can you hear me? I think so. And thank you for allowing me to ask the question live. The question that I would like to ask Mr. Ambassador is about the research partnership between Europe and ASEAN. I have known that EU launched a new campaign of the new horizontal research program. So I would like you to give a comment and an update on this program. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Indeed, we have under our new budget, which kicks in this year, we have expanded the Horizon 2020 program, which is our big research program in Europe, because we want to invest in research. We know that's where the future lies, and also the strength of our economy in the future. And this will bring about a number of opportunities for EU-ASEAN cooperation, as already happens. I can give you one example. Next month, we'll be having a seminar on high-speed computing, which is a very technical thing. I don't understand all of it, not to say any of it. But it does bring about a number of advantages for, say, COVID-19 management or disaster management or all of those issues. But a lot of these programs are handled through so-called call for tenders. So there would be a call on, say, nanotechnology or space technology, and then the EU looks for the best partner around the world, but also within the ASEAN region. So there too, I can only encourage you, if you want to find out more, to look at the different websites of Horizon 2020. If you are a researcher, to see whether there's any opportunities there for your research group or for you as an individual. That brings me to one other point. We do every year put all of our cooperation in one very nice booklet called the Blue Book, which you can also consult online.
Hello, can people hear me? Yes, hi, sorry. I think I was trying to unmute myself, but then I kept getting muted back. Might have just been a little technical glitch there, as it always does happen, even though this is also a youth event. So technical glitches happen for all kinds of events now. And next, I would like to invite Mary Rose to raise her question.
Yes, hi, am I audible?
Yes, please, but
okay.
Just so because we only have about 10 plus minutes left, if you can limit your question to just one, that would be great, so we can answer more.
Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Ambassador. My question is, during the pandemic, what does the EU-ASEAN Partnership challenges, what are the challenges you have faced during this pandemic? And that's basically it.
Thank you, Marie-Rose, I think it was. Basically, the challenge in our cooperation as is probably the same as the challenge in every line of work or in every economic activity. That is, a lot of what we do is about meeting people, and a lot of what we do is getting people around the table and talk, so that, as I tried to explain in response to the question from Arif, we can understand each other better. So. Hello?
We still hear you very well, Ambassador.
Okay. All right. Okay. So basically that, I think, has been the biggest challenge that we have been facing, and that obviously slows down decision-making, that slows down cooperation, that slows down a lot of what we had set out to do, because technology and Zooms only take you so far. On the other hand, we have explored new areas of cooperation on COVID-19, on health, on economic recovery, which we probably would not have done without the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, there are always opportunities with challenges. And next, I'd like to invite Simon Kack from Germany to ask your question. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am. Hope you can hear me all well.
Yes, very well.
Perfect.
Good
yes.
Morning.
Morning. Yeah, it's very early in Germany, so it's 9:30 right now. Thank you for being present, Mr. Ambassador. My question would be, I'm curious to know what role you consider for human rights and especially the enforcement of human rights to play in the strategic partnership within the next years, because there have been many discussions going on, especially right now in Myanmar as well, about the topic.
Thank you, Simon. Basically, we have with ASEAN a very strong human rights dialogue. Actually, we're the only partner of ASEAN who has a almost annual dialogue on human rights with the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights. And in that dialogue, we discuss all issues under the sun, as we do in the ministerial dialogues or in the political context that we have, or when our senior officials meet. I think we can discuss all of the issues, and there's many issues on which we do disagree, but one has to do it in a way showing respect and I think listening to one another. I think part of your question was on Myanmar. I think, let me just say that we have seen the statement that was issued by the chair of ASEAN, Brunei, immediately after the coup. I think that's very welcome. And I think we'd like to support ASEAN in its further work on and with Myanmar. So I think that's, potentially again one area where we can work closely together. But for sure, for us, human rights is at the center of our policy, whether it be with ASEAN or whether it be with any other partner around the world, and that will not change with the strategic partnership.
So thank you, Ambassador, and we have time for a few more questions. May we invite Kiao Myo Ong from Myanmar. Please ask your question to the Ambassador.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for choosing my question, and I'm really nervous to answer the questions. So, Mr. Ambassador, do you think there will be impasse on ASEAN as well as EU with the political developments of Myanmar during this day? Is there anything you want to say to Myanmar citizens who are now striking back the military coup in Myanmar? Thank you.
Thank you. The question was not entirely audible to me, but I think I got the gist of it. Well, the day after the day of the coup, and then repeated day after the coup by all EU foreign ministers, what we've been saying is that we call for the immediate and the unconditional release of both the president and the state councillor. And secondly, that we want an immediate restoration of the legitimately elected civilian government in Myanmar. And I think those two points, those two requests, if you like, they remain the center point, the point of departure of our policy on Myanmar. So what we're now doing is consulting with all of our partners, including within ASEAN, on the way forward. And that includes the chair, Brunei, but also a number of the ASEAN member states who several of them have made bilateral statements. And we follow the situation very closely. We've seen the news of the restrictions on different internet, social media platforms. We have seen the developments of, say, civil unrest, strikes, demonstrations, and so on and so forth. So we follow that closely, and we follow that obviously the whole situation with a lot of concern.
Thank you, Ambassador, for updating us about that matter. And this is an issue that we are closely following right now. And unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. May we call on Senya Este? Please ask your question.
Yes, hello. My question is, the EU is known for your advanced technology. Do you have any programs to support ASEAN scientists and maybe facilitate a transfer of knowledge to help our cost as possible? Thank you.
Yeah, there too. There was a small. Yeah, hello. I think there was.
Yeah, I think there was a very small disruption, but I think we got the gist of your question.
Okay. Yes, no problem. Indeed, there are quite a few programs, research programs that focus on the issue of technology. Again, there's many different areas of this research program on Horizon 2020. I gave the example earlier of our upcoming cooperation on high-speed computing. But really there are many opportunities in that world, and I do encourage you, if you have a specific area you're interested in, you can also just send us a mail after this webinar. That's also possible, but otherwise just continue to check the different websites to see what kind of opportunities there are, and of course follow us on social media.
Okay, thank you for our very active participants for asking interesting questions about important matters in the region and about the EU-ASEAN partnership. We all learned a lot from that session. This next session is also a fun one. It will require your knowledge. If you know a lot about ASEAN and EU, this is your chance to prove that. And we urge you to participate because the winners will receive cool items from the EU. Please pay attention to the instructions. It's also flashed on your screen right now. Go to joinmyquiz.com/pro and input the code. It will be provided later. And there are 10 questions and you will have 20 seconds to answer each question. The participant who can answer first, who can answer right and quick, will get higher scores. So you have to think and answer fast. We will give prizes to the top 5 winners, and This is important. If you see your username as top 5 winner on the final leaderboard, please take a screenshot of your monitor on your mobile phone or desktop as proof so you can redeem your prize later on. And make sure your username is visible for verification purposes. The winners will be required to contact the committee via email, and please inform them of your detailed address and proof of winning, which is the screenshot and final leaderboard. And the mission will arrange the prize shipment to your address without any charge. So please head on to the link. You can see it in the chat box, and just click that link and you will be directed to the quiz.
We're already seeing so many of you joining, and we're just giving a couple more 5 seconds for more people to join, because if you start from the beginning, there's a higher chance for you to get more points as we go along. So don't miss this opportunity. Definitely try and vie for the top 5. But we'll start playing the game in, shall we count down? 10, 9, 8. We're still seeing more people joining. Wow.
They
And you will
really want
see
the
you also
prize.
have a tiny icon to represent yourself. 4, 3. Remember, the code is 778696. Are we good? Oh, wow. And I'm also told that our Ambassador Driesmans will also be joining. Let's keep a lookout for which one he is. Or maybe he will just score all. Wait, Ambassador, give everyone a chance. You will score all the questions. Okay.
I'll refrain.
But maybe you can give some hints. We'll begin with our first question. The ASEAN-EU Dialogue Partnership was elevated to a strategic partnership at the, and your options are 21st, 22nd, 23rd, or the 24th ASEAN-EU Ministerial Meeting. Did you hear what the ambassador said earlier? Time's up. And the answer was missed, but it's actually the 23rd ASEAN-EU Ministerial Meeting. And I see actually quite many of you got it right. Moving on to the second question.
Second question is, as a strategic partner, the EU and ASEAN commit to conduct regular summits at leaders level. Do you think this is true or false?
Is it true or false? What did Ambassador Driesmans say? And of course, we can see, the names have shifted. So what is the right answer? It's definitely true. We'll move on to the next question. You can feel the tenseness with all the music going on. How many countries are there who are member states of the EU? Remember, something happened earlier this year that would affect the number. So is it 25, 27, 28, or 29? Any clues, Ambassador? Okay, let's take a look at the answers. And movement of people. Wow, someone keeping the lead. So we have 27 EU member states right now.
Moving
Our
to the next
fourth question.
The EU-ASEAN Strategic Partnership benefits citizens in the 2 regions. Do you think this is true or false?
Or do you think it benefits only one side more? Time's up.
Let's check.
Ooh, close.
Yeah,
I
of
think
course.
there's only a difference of 20 points.
Yeah.
Okay, we're halfway through. This is the fifth question. All of these are areas of sustainable development except human rights, smart cities, cybersecurity, and healthy oceans. What contributes to sustainable development? And one of these is not considered very much so. And what might that be? Let's first take a look at the leaderboard. Wow, more movement, but someone's still keeping the lead. And the answer was cybersecurity is not so much an area of sustainable development.
Next question. How many citizens are benefiting from the EU-ASEAN Strategic Partnership?
Ooh, how many citizens are there in the EU and in the ASEAN? This tests your math. Is it 1, 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 billion citizens?
Oh, the lead changed now. The answer is 1.1 billion citizens.
With our next question, don't worry, top 5 will get it. The EU mission to ASEAN is located in... Where did Ambassador Driesmans say he was just this afternoon? Is it Bangkok, Jakarta, Manila, or Singapore? Let's take a look at the answer. But before we do, let's see who's still top 5 right now. Oh, okay. And most of you got it right. It's in Jakarta. So our 8th question.
Yeah. The EU has contributed through the Team Europe package valued over 800 million euros to combat the spread of COVID-19 in ASEAN member states. Is this true or false?
Maybe they would change the amount of the package and then it might be false.
Yeah, let's take a look. Oh,
still keeping the lead for somebody.
The answer is true.
Our second last question. Come on. EU is ASEAN's 4th largest trading partner. Is that true or false? Think about all the trading partners that we have and where does EU rank in there? Let's see if some people have changed their leaderboard ranking.
Yeah.
Whoa, there has been change. All right, and the answer is false. So the EU is actually ASEAN's 3rd largest trading partner. So now,
this is your last chance to change your position. These are the main areas of cooperation between the EU and ASEAN except economic cooperation. Is it security cooperation, law and order, or sustainable development? This is the last question.
I hear lots of bubbles popping. That's really good. It means that you are all taking part. And now let's see. Whoa.
Yeah, the answer is law and order.
So looking at the leaderboard, let's take a look. Yay! Congratulations to the top 3. Although we did say top 5. So now let's see. Is there a way to zoom in? Or perhaps I can read out the names that I see in the top 5. Congratulations to Xenia Este, to Simon Kak, to Gabriela, to Diva, wow, and Viviana. So the top 5 here, you will be able to receive your prize, but first, don't close your screen. Take a screenshot of you having won the top 5, and then with your username needs to be shown on your screen so that you can have the ranking there and your name to prove that it was you. Then share the screenshot with the email that will be put into the chat box so that you can claim your prize, but please don't post it on social media and with your address. That's not very wise when it comes to cybersecurity. So please do send your screenshot to the email that will be put in the chat box. That's eu-asean@landel-mills.com. We will also be able to send the instructions for all of you who have registered and provided your emails. So thank you very much and congratulations to the top 5 winners. Yay! And to the team for such exciting questions. They were not easy, but I think Xenia, our top person, got all of them correct. Maybe that's Ambassador. But okay, so let's hear from Ambassador Driesmans about what he thought about today, all the great questions that were coming in and all the tough ones, just as he requested.
Well, thank you very much to all of you. Really, it's been great, great fun. The topics were there was a wide variety of them. Let me put it that way, from environment to a bit of politics as well, and a bit of fun at the end. So thank you very much. I'm very encouraged to see all of this interest in EU-ASEAN relations and what we do here as European Union, because as I said at the beginning, we're very far and we're not necessarily always very audible. So I was happy to come and explain some of what we do. And my message to you as ASEAN youth, please continue like this, make your voice heard, organize yourselves, and try to weigh on the public debate. Because as I said at an earlier webinar, they always say that you are the future, but as a matter of fact, you are very much the present. You have to weigh on things now. So thank you so much to you both, Irish and Mika, and to all of the youngsters that joined us today.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Driesmans, for joining us. You're always welcome. You are not just young at heart, you are young. And we will be very grateful to learn from you today. I also would like to inform everybody that we will have another quiz. So for everyone else that feels like, oh no, my internet was not fast enough, you can join the EU in ASEAN's quiz on social media. That will be on their pages. You can just follow @EU in ASEAN. And that message will also be posted later on so that you can take a look and follow them on social media. And with that, I would like to say thank you very much. And it was a really great afternoon to start off the week. It's Monday, can you believe it? But thank you all for joining us today. My name is Mika Tan from the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. And with me is
Irish Dominado from Asian Farmers Association. Thank you, everyone. And do watch out for the next activity. And join us again. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.